Hello, everyone. This is a brief tutorial class on how to prepare for your next PCSP meeting or 90-day meeting for Arizona DDD and long-term care members. My name is Brandy Kuhn, and I'm the Executive Director of Raising Voices Coalition. And today with me, I have my friend Shai, and she's going to introduce herself really quick as well.
Hi everyone, my name is Shai, and I am a mom here in Southern Arizona with a little who we just did her meeting, and so I'm just joining Brandy to walk with her or her walk with me with what we did for our daughter's meeting.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And just for those that don't know, Raising Voices Coalition, we have our memberships, in addition to our free services, which is our podcast and our online advocacy hub with that's hosted on Facebook. And this course is an example of the courses that we have in our Learning Hub, which is accessible for members, and what you could see potentially with different areas of how to help guide you as a personal advocate, whether it's a school setting, medical settings. Right now, we're talking about DDD and Arizona Long Term Care Services. But it has a lot of fantastic resources from other parents and experts in the field on how to navigate different situations you might face. And so this is just kind of a teaser, but I also wanted this to be public and available for everyone in our community because I know that these changes are impacting a lot of people and it's really scary. And so we wanted to give a quick guide in addition to our most recent call to action to help you guide through what those tools look like and how to use them to best prepare for those conversations. So I'm going to share my screen really quick. Okay. You can see that okay?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so this is our call to action, and I will have the link to this available in the description of this video. And when you click on here, there's also a Spanish version of this document available, and that has been a great resource for those who don't speak English. And we want to make sure that we're reaching all varieties of people in our community. If you go through the background, it discusses a bit of the history and the concerns we have about the rollout of the new habilitation and attendant care assessments that went into place on October 1st, as well as some concerns of regulations that we are highlighting and talking with state leaders about. We also highlighted in here our three asks that we're wanting to see for improvement for these updated policies and procedures. So that includes delaying the execution of the implementation of these new services, creating an exception process for extraordinary care that is not captured in this new assessment tool, and also a review of the habilitation policy changes because in the drafts that went out for public comment earlier this summer, they did not include hard age and time limitations for habilitation. So those are our three asks at this point. If you go down to action item number 1, it will discuss ways that you can share and take action to raise your voice, to email decision makers, and share your concerns and how it applies to your individual family. This can be done by caregivers, members themselves, community members, people impacted by disability in a wide variety of ways. You can also call the governor's office and or your legislators, and there's a sample script on here as well. And then our action item number 3 is our legislative town hall. So this was hosted, I need to fix this. It was hosted on September 26th. And it included Representative Julie Willoughby, Representative Gutierrez, and Senator Shamp. And they also had a guest speaker on there that um, shared about our 1115 waiver, which is basically the contract that the state has with the federal government to provide home and community based services in addition to our entire Medicaid system. And it's a really great um, picture and understanding of how those systems work and what implications they have in what we're seeing happen today. So, if you haven't watched that, I highly, highly recommend it. Okay, so we're going to get down to evaluating the impact for your member. And Shai did a really great job of this when she knew her daughter's 90-day meeting was coming up in preparing for that conversation. And what I recommend to everybody, regardless of your member's age, I personally do this if I'm thinking my child's needs have changed in the past. I will go through the assessment tool myself to the best of my ability and fill that out. So I kind of have a rough understanding of what I want to bring up with the support coordinators and also what I could anticipate could be the result of that conversation. So I'm just going to briefly show you the new assessment tool. You can find that by clicking on the link here and find the right one. Okay. So it's going to pull up as an Excel document. And Shai, you can still see that on the screen. Okay. And there are two different pages. So there is an adult page and then a child for those under the age of 18. So we're going to look at the child version today, and you can kind of go through it, read the instructions. The things you want to keep in mind, you want to watch for the age limitations and think about your members' need level with that as well. So I'm going to, for an example today, I'm going to go through a child that's 8 years old, and we're going to kind of use that as a model for our discussion. And these aren't age, or they're not a particular child, they're kind of a generalized situation. And so you will want to customize this for your member because no two members are going to um, be equal in their needs and or what they can expect on this document. So that's why kind of preparing yourself for it is going to be super, super important. Shai, did you have any comments on this section before I kind of go through it?
Yeah, no, I would just agree with what you said. I had this up while I was reassessing and thinking what has changed. What does it look like for my kiddo today? And paying attention to the ages and what categories are they not going to include this time, and what does that look like for her. And so it was super helpful to go through all of those categories and then see the timelines and the days and really prepare. I was able to put our own kind of thing together based off of that, so I could bring it to the table when we had our meeting, and it was really helpful for the back and forth discussion.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. And I find too that if I go in and I know I've prepared for this conversation, I'm a better advocate for my child because I feel ready to be confident in the numbers I'm saying and what I'm recommending is their best need, is their needs on this assessment. So we'll kind of go through this and see what this child who's age 8 will qualify for and kind of go from there. So first, we're going to look at housekeeping and cleaning. It says don't assess for under 18, so we're going to leave that alone. Laundry, it says do not assess for under 18, so we're going to leave that alone. Incontinence based laundry, this member who is 8 years old does use briefs. And I would say every other day on average, they have incontinent laundry. So I'm going to put 20 hours or 20 minutes, I'm sorry, every other day on here. I'm just going to kind of go through and fill it out. So we're going to say 4 days a week they have incontinent laundry care needs. And I also want to make a note that these time recommendations here are guidelines. They are not hard and fast rules. So let's say, for example, you have a member who's incontinent, but every single time um, they need to completely be changed out of their clothes, whatever they're sitting in needs or laying in needs to be changed, all of that kind of stuff. Let's say you spend 2 hours a day. This would probably extreme, but I've known people that this happens to, that have incontinent laundry up to 2 hours a day that they're changing and or washing and or putting away. I would put that in there and have a conversation with the support coordinator, because these are time recommendations and guidelines, not firm rules. So just keep that in mind. Um, okay. Then food shopping is not for under 18, so we're going to leave that alone. Medication pickup. This member has their medication delivered, so we're not going to put anything there. Um, and then we're going to go down to meal prep and cleanup. So this says do not assess for under the age of 12. And so we're going to leave that alone and not fill out anything in there. If your member is over the age of 12, then you can add the minutes appropriate for each meal for the preparation and modification needs for that individual. And then we're going to go down to eating and feeding. So this member is 8 years old, and we're going to say that they need the maximum support. They can eat by mouth, but they need to be fed with like a spoon. And it generally takes about 30 minutes for this member to have their meals fed to them. Um, so I'm going to put in 30 minutes for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, plus a snack in there. And this is accumulating the minutes as we're going. Let's see. Ah, there we go. Okay. And then we're just going to put the 10 minutes here for the snack. Why is that not adding up? Ah, okay. It's asking how many snacks per day. Sorry. We're going to say 2 snacks per day. Okay. And then bathing. So if the member was under the age of 8, we would not be assessing for this. But since this member is 8 years old, we're going to say that they do a sponge bath every other day and then a real bath um, on the opposite days of the week. And then this member does need full assistance with bathing. So we're going to put max support there. And that generally takes about 20 minutes for this member. And then dressing. So this member is under the age or is over the age limit. And they need help with dressing. So we're going to do 15 minutes in the morning and then 15 minutes in the evening. Again, if these guidelines don't fit your member, I would put the difference there and have a conversation about that.
Yeah,
Grooming.
I was just gonna
Go ahead.
piggyback on what you said, Brandy.
Go for it.
Anytime there was kind of like a variance that didn't necessarily fit the new tool, if you will, I just made notes to the side and had that conversation in regard to, well, what about this situation and how does that fit into this tool? Um, and so that's what I would do. I'd use the tool how it is, but if something didn't make sense or didn't fit into it, I just had a side note that so we could talk about where would this go? How does it fit into this tool?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
I didn't disregard it, right? I still brought it up, but it
Yep.
was just more of a side note. And that was really helpful.
Yes. Yeah, agreed. Well, and it's helpful because then they can add the notes to their assessment as the support coordinator. So I went up here, I added for grooming, since this member was 8 years old. I added the time for the grooming in the morning and after and evening. And then same thing for toileting. This member utilizes briefs. And so we put 4 times a day, 15 minutes each time. I would base that off your member's needs. Um, they don't have a catheter or an ostomy, so we're going to leave those blank. And then we're going to go down here to mobility. This member needs moderate support with mobility. They can move a little bit, but not completely independently. So this is also where if you are, have different mobility needs and they're over that age limit, you could kind of you know, share what that member needs based on, what happens in the day with that hands-on assistance and um, supports and assistive devices and things of that nature. Um, Transferring, a similar concept. This member needs moderate support, not maximum. So we're going to do, I would say about 20 minutes a day for transferring for this member. So even though that's over the age guideline, we could justify it due to them needing that hands-on assistance every time they get in and out of a vehicle. Once they move, from a couch to the floor, things of that nature, that's considered the transferring. Um, Okay, and then general supervision. This member is 8 years old, so they do not qualify for general supervision. So we're going to leave that blank. And then we're going to come down here to habilitation. And because this member is 8 years old, it says do not exceed 9 hours in a 7-day period. And so we are going to leave that as the 9 hours. And we're going to do 100 minutes in a day. And is that right? No. And this is part of the thing of we're not the support coordinators. And so um, the thing to keep in mind is we might not fill this out completely correctly, as I'm a little bit struggling here. So keep that in mind if you're like, wait, that's not what I came up with, and maybe just work it through with them versus kind of being hard and fast of like, oh, I did your assessment, I know what this should be, because we are subject to make mistakes. And I always try to go into those conversations with the mindset of, I'm the expert on my child, you're the expert on, you know, the state assessments and how those things should be evaluated. Um, and let's work together to figure out the solution. And so I'm going to stay in like an inquisitive, curious place versus accusatory and aggressive, if that makes sense. Trying to think, Shai, do you know
Yeah,
what
so
I'm
Brandy, this is where if you're gonna put, yeah, if you're gonna put 2 in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday,
Yes.
then that's the number of times. And so you would want to put the 60. So 60 minutes a
Okay.
day times 2. So that's the 120
Thank you.
a day for the 2 hour. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. That's what I was doing wrong. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, so then we have the 540 hours a week. And then we're going to go down here to the summary. And what this ended up coming up with for this member was they have roughly, oh, I have to do the math on that. So 18.33 plus 9.33. So they have just under 34 hours. So I'd say that they would probably get 33 hours approved, maybe 34 hours of attendant care with this assessment, and then habilitation would be 9 hours a week. So another thing I've heard, and I think this is continuing to be a misconception since the 40-hour parents as paid caregivers policy rolled out, is that the member, if they only have parents as paid caregivers hours, um, should only have 40 hours on their planning document. And that is incorrect. So for this member, if the support coordinator came in and said, okay, well, I know it says 42.5 hours total, but we're only going to give 40, you would come back and say, no, it needs to accurately reflect what the member's needs are. And I will work with my agency to figure out how to, fill those full complete hours. So, anyway, that's just a little tidbit on that. So that is how I personally go through this for my own child, and figure out what they would qualify for under this new assessment. Um, and let's say, for example, you have a member who you don't believe their true needs are really being reflected in this document, um, and they have extraordinary care needs that aren't being captured due to the age limitations. You do have the option to request an NOA and to appeal. Um, Despite what is being said in a few places, you do have the capacity to appeal no matter what. My caution and guidance and recommendation is that those that choose to appeal are doing so because they truly believe that extraordinary care is not being captured for that member. So if you go through this new assessment and you're like, okay, well, maybe before this assessment, my child had 20 hours of attendant care and they had 20 hours of habilitation. Okay, now those kind of shifted. So now they have 9 hours of habilitation and 33 hours of attendant care. I'm not going to say this is everyone's, perfect scenario, but okay, maybe I feel like my child's extraordinary care is captured in this now, and I'm okay with it. Um, I would probably just leave it alone versus filing an appeal. Let's then take the example of you have a child who is being reduced, a drastic amount, and they now have severe health and safety concerns um, where appropriate supervision and needs are not being met. That would be a situation where I would probably pursue an appeal. So, um, any thoughts on this before we kind of go on, Shay?
Yeah, just piggybacking just off of what you said, just I ran myself 2 scenarios. I did the assessment like what we just did right here, and then I went back through the assessment again without the age caps, which what my kiddo qualified for in the past and what her needs are today, right? Because even what her needs are today weren't reflected in her last assessment either. Just because changes and some things that are new to her and her needs. And so, really trying to get a big picture idea of her as an individual, regardless of who's doing the care. What are her needs attached to her, and what does that look like? And does the new tool capture that, or did it not? In our case, it didn't. And so, with some of those differences, and open communication, and it was a great meeting. We had a great experience with our SC and their supervisor. We are doing the NOA and the appeal process. There was not pushback from RSC or supervisor, but they know my kiddo, they know her needs. They also know that her needs are more, even though her coverage is now less. So it's just the communication, and just knowing that situation. What does the tool say today? What did the past look like? But present time, what is your kid today? Not what they even got before this new assessment, but today, what are their needs? I think was just really helpful to get a bigger picture of that member today and what does that look like. And so I ran through the tool again, removing some of the age brackets in my own mind to see some of those things. And then that was part of our discussion. And so I think if you're one of those families who have a kiddo and that who have extraordinary needs and they're not being captured, that's a super helpful exercise to do for yourself and bring to the table as a conversation. Not that it's going to change anything in the assessment, because it won't. But what will your next steps be after the assessment? What does that look like for that member? Yeah.
Yep, exactly. I love that. So next, if we go back to the call to action document, we have a few additional links. The first one is the minor caregiver option discussion guide and decision roadmap. So this is something that could be used by a support coordinator and is probably just helpful for you to review as things that they could ask questions on or bring up. It's going to, help the family and or the support coordinator in best of circumstances. The intention of this is to help people understand what their caregiver options are, who can be a DCW or direct care worker, and how those can be considered and looked at so that that member is most supported within their given circumstances. So that is helpful for review. There also is a parents as paid caregivers acknowledgement of understanding form. And that document, if you are a parent as paid caregiver, is going to be something that you will be asked to sign. So I would review this and understand what you are agreeing to beforehand so that you're not caught off guard by this. So just review that and make sure you understand it.
Yeah.
My
In
Go
ours,
ahead.
they did bring up both hard
They
copy
brought up both.
that we signed. Yeah. Even
Okay.
the other one that you just showed, and at least in our meeting, the SC and their supervisor, we went over both forms.
Okay. And you signed physical paper.
Yeah, physical paper for these 2.
Okay. That's good to know. Thank you.
Yep.
And then the HCBS is, scheduling tool. Make sure I find the right one. So this one is helpful. It is not an assessment per se. It is a guide, but it can be really helpful. I have done this for my own child, to just get a really good picture of what that kid's needs look like, and help capture any missed service hours or potential needs that that member might have. So I would just go through this and fill it out. It's something you could send to the support coordinator ahead of time, just to help kind of speed things along. But it's one of those things that's also a good like thought exercise to ensure that things are captured, um, in a generalized setting. Every week is not going to be the same. Every day is not going to be the same. We all know that, and but it's just a general description of what takes place for that member.
Yeah, RSC brought a copy and
Mhm.
walked through that exercise with us and had a hard copy that they were filling out.
Okay.
E- So even, and I'm sure not every SC is going to do everything exactly the same,
Yeah.
but um, that is something I didn't do. I had it, but I didn't do. Hindsight, since we did walk through that with the SC, I wish I would have done it beforehand in our meeting. So again, just something that might be helpful. Had the other ones done, that one I had, but just never filled it out that detailed. But we did take the time and fill it out that detailed with the SE. They were actually handwriting it and had it a hard copy.
Okay.
So,
That's good to know.
yep.
Awesome. Okay. And then this is the next action item. This is the sample meeting prep document. And this is literally what I use for my own kid. I've used it for several years. And I fill this out before the PCSP meeting. I send it to the support coordinator and our DDD nurse ahead of time so that they have all of the information they need. My goal is like, I want to get through this meeting as fast as possible. I know you do. So let's all be prepared as possible so that we can be most efficient. So that's kind of the background of this, but it also helps you to be a good advocate, to not get caught up with like the little details of like, when was this appointment? When was that? You have that already, and so that your energy and focus can be on the right advocacy things that you need to say versus kind of these like details that go into this document. So I would put the date of the PCSP meeting, I put the member's name, their date of birth, their address, and then their height and weight. And then I would add in any, specific agenda items that I want to be sure that we go over. So any follow-up that took place from our last meeting, any medical therapy updates, health and safety risks and or documentation that I want to provide. One thing that I added in here a few years ago for my son is he is non-speaking, but he has a lot of opinions and he is cognitively his age. And we found that we had a few providers that were not being very respectful of how they were talking about his bodily care in front of him. And he told us through his communication device that it made him feel bad about himself. And so my husband and I worked on creating a document of how we expect his care providers to interact with him and talk about him and engage with him while they're providing personal care. And so that is something I also link to and provide to our DDD team so that they can be respectful and honoring of those wishes. Um, so anything like that, if your child has a like behavioral plan or specific things that you want noted, that's something else so you could include. Um, okay, so in here you could do like past and upcoming medical, hospital, and or dental appointments. Generally they want the past 90 days and the upcoming 90 days of visits. So I'll just list those there. Current specialists with the doctor's name and their specialty. I also generally, if I have it, I'll include their address and phone number. Any current list of medications. I will include all daily and PRN or as needed medications, with their dosages and how to administer them. so that there's always an updated list. Generally, I will bold or highlight any changes so that the support coordinators and the district nurses are aware of those and make sure that they're updated. I had a few years ago where a support coordinator did not appropriately adjust a medication change for a few meetings. And I got really bothered by that because I had asked for it to be updated and it wasn't. And I finally sent up um, a grievance because I was very frustrated that if something happened to me and my child was an emergency situation, this is the document that they would be looking at to follow for his plan of care. And I knew if the medications that he had, if they were given at the level that were written in that document at that time, it would drastically physically harm him, if not worse. And so those are serious things to make sure that they're correct in these documents every single meeting. Emergency protocols. So if your member has seizures or any allergies or behavior crisis plan, you could link to those and line out what those processes look like. Current HCBS hours and the agencies or provider agencies that those go to. So you can list out, the attendant care, habilitation, respite, nursing, and then all the therapies. If they have a day program, if they have a, group home, anything of that nature can go in there. Weekly schedule. Again, you could put your own in here or you could use the other document that was created to kind of have a rough estimate of the weekly hours. Something to note that if your member is under the age of 18 and they do require overnight care between the hours of 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., then you will need to list specifically in that document that a parent caregiver can provide overnight hours between those 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. I am just sheesh. 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. um, needs to specifically be written in the PCSP for the agencies to make those exceptions. So if that fits your needs, make sure that's noted. Um, Health and safety risks, if they have seizures, elopement, wandering, even if these things aren't being captured in the assessment tool, you want to have them noted and included in the PCSP writing as far as that member's health and safety risks. Um, just so that they're documented, there's a paper trail, all of those types of things are super important to include. And that kind of goes also into the recording. If you have a child who has certain outbursts or things of that nature, having documentation, a paper trail, whether that's a log, a seizure log, or you have video of certain situations, having evidence of that is helpful. So keep those in mind as you're building out those risks. Think of how you could document those better. If you have any letters from physicians or doctors, you could include links to that in this section. And then just a brief update, every single PCSP meeting, I'm sure most of us know this, the support coordinators come in and say, hey, how's the member doing? What's new? That's generally them filling out this section of the PCSP and updating that member's history. And so you can kind of preemptively include details on their education or their progress or challenges or things that have changed so that the support coordinator can adjust that. If there's any upcoming travel or major events for that member, also, if there's any action items. So, for example, if you are requesting an NOA after the meeting, this is somewhere I would put that you want the support coordinator to take action and send you an NOA. Um, Also, if you need a vendor call put out, you could put that in there. That's something the support coordinator needs to do. And you could also put action items in there for yourself. So let's say that they need a doctor letter or something of that nature. Um, you could add that in there for something to remind yourself of. And then any additional, notes or things that you want to ensure that you capture, you could add at the very end. Um, I also want to remind, and Shai's been a good example of this, of they had a great meeting, even though it wasn't the, outcome that they wanted. You can still have positive conversations. You can still stay inquisitive. You can still be a great advocate, and just approach it with that mindset versus going in with like a hostile, upset energy, because I think that will really help shape the tone of you showing up in that space and being there for your child. Is there anything else that you would add to that, Shy, before I move on?
Yeah, just two things. One, you made a really good point, and I learned a lesson myself 2 meetings ago. Um, I know we're all busy and it's a lot. And when we get these documents back, it's a lot. And I decided one time, it's been a while, shamelessly, that I scrubbed the document we got back after our meeting. And I was really grateful that I did because there was so much in there that was old, that wasn't taken out. There was new with old. It was kind of really messy. And so highlighted, made notes on it, sent it back and said, I'm happy to sign this when all these things get fixed. And so but that's on me too. Right? That's on me too. They did their part, and in the past, I missed it on other ones, and it just transferred over. And so, just scrubbing it, especially now going forward with these new tools, scrub your own and make sure it's updated medications and all the things that it's
Right.
accurate. It's an accurate
Yeah.
document because it's a legal document and it wasn't accurate. So, just piggybacking how important that is. And then also, when we were said and done with the meeting, it wasn't our first time with our SE. It's been about 3 years. Um, but first time meeting the supervisor, they were both very grateful. Thank you so much. Just like you said, the vibe, the attitude, the way the conversation was handled, because they're definitely not receiving that every time they go into meetings. Um, and it's like the shooting the messenger, you know? And so just reiterating, this isn't easy on them either. And so it's not us versus them. We're both coming, trying to do what's best with us as the advocate, and then them having to do what they have to do as well. So just keeping that in mind will go a long way. At least it'll make it better in the meeting for everybody. If you just have an attitude of gratitude, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's hard. There's a lot of big emotions, there's a lot of frustrations. That's all extremely valid. Also, you protecting your peace and being able to show up as the best advocate you can is well worth its time and putting that energy out in the world.
And it's
Uh,
easier to do when you come prepared. Like this document really was so very helpful for me. Like
yeah,
taking the time, the hyperlinks, all the things, beginning as prepared as I could helped me feel more calmer and help the emotions part
yeah,
stay more regulated, if you will, because I was more prepared.
yeah, exactly. Okay, so then the next link on here is our habilitation goal bank. I know with the updated changes, they did make some changes on what type of goals can be habilitation goals. So it has the kind of guidelines on how you can get habilitation on here, but then it comes down and you want to make sure that each goal has a target skill, a measurement, and a prompt level. Um, so there's a variety of different recommendations in here with safety skills, self-help, hygiene. If I was personally doing this, when I personally do this, I'm also going to go and check because you can't have a goal. Let's say, for example, we have a goal that the member can completely transfer themselves all throughout the day, right? That's our goal. Well, if we go back to our attendant care assessment, we said that member needs moderate assistance every single day with transferring. Okay, so now we have to choose if that's going to be an rehabilitation goal or an attendant care hour. So you can't have it be both, it has to be one or the other. So I would probably say, okay, instead of working on transferring as habilitation, I'm going to go and work on communication with this child. Um, and have my goals be around communication and social skills. So that's something that you could just keep in mind as you're looking at what the current habilitation goals are and what you're choosing to use moving forward, um, so that they are reflective of what that member needs, but also keep in mind of the rules and how those services interact, if that makes sense. Um, Yeah. So you can go through, there's recommendations in there, and then hopefully that just also helps to prompt ideas as well for habilitation. Another thing that I've been asked quite frequently on is nursing assessments and LHA. So if your member has high medical needs, where they have a G tube, a GJ tube, NG tubes, if they have respiratory needs like oxygen, suctioning, a vest, if they have ostomies, if they have tracheotomies, a wide variety of different nursing based skill level care needs, I would highly recommend, if you don't already have weekly nursing hours, to request a nursing assessment. There is a program called the Licensed Health Aide Program where you can become certified and provide those skills as a caregiver. It's a little bit different. You have to do more like nursing clinical notes in that setting, and there's some different training obligations. But parents can fulfill those hours for minor children, and if your member does receive G-tube medications, they can qualify for hours. Currently, G-tube feedings do not qualify for nursing hours. So that is something to keep in mind. I've been talking to top brass in the departments for multiple years, and I will continue to do so. The G-tube medications were added, I think, 6 or 8 months ago, so that was an improvement. Um, that is also a Excel document. So if you're going through and saying, hey, I think my child may have nursing needs, you can open that document and look at, okay, do they have respiratory needs, neurological like seizures, um, cardiovascular concerns? So this is more of the nursing side of things, but you can also anticipate how many hours a week you could potentially get by going through and entering it in the same capacity that we did the home and community based attendant care and habilitation assessment. So it'll be similar on that front. Um, okay. So I want to, okay, again, in here it discusses making sure that you document between the hours of 6. I'm just not getting those hours right. Between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Okay, it's written in there. I really hope everyone gets that correct. I'm sorry. Um, if your member needs support between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., then that needs to be written in the PCSP. Um, and like we discussed, these changes are not the fault of the support coordinators, the supervisors. These decisions were made at much, much higher levels, and we are working and having conversations with those people that are still continuing into October and beyond. So be sure to keep that in mind as you go into those meetings. This call to action has additional great resources. If your family is needing other community supports or safety nets, things that you could look into by connecting with like your provider agency, um, with your community, if you have a faith community or other local groups that might provide supports. If your member in your family financial situation might be changing drastically, you might consider like Social Security disability or SNAP, things of that nature. Um, Also, if you are needing other resources, Encircle Families is a great resource to connect you one-on-one with food, housing, or community assistance in your specific area of the state. Care for the Caregivers offers mental health supports in small groups. So they're fantastic at that. And then there's also warm and hotlines in our state. So if you are getting to that point of crisis, please be sure to reach out to somebody. We know this is hard. We know this is a lot for a lot of people, but want you to be the most prepared you can, but also take care of yourself to the best of your ability at the same time. Um, okay. And then appeals and legal guidance. So we kind of mentioned this briefly. Disability Rights Arizona has put out a legal guide on appeals and the notice of action process. So we've mentioned NOAs before, so that stands for notice of action. And basically, what that document is it's an official letter written by the support coordinator that basically says the reason for the change in service. And I say change in service because it could be noted for an increase, it could be noted for a decrease. It's basically just the official document that says the reason why something changed. And then it also on that document will list out the appeals process. And so you want to make sure you read carefully this Disability Rights Arizona legal guidance as well as that NOA document, because there's timelines, there's specific considerations to look at if you are going to be pursuing an appeal. So I just want to make sure that's clear. Of the NOA itself is not starting the appeal process. The NOA is the legal document that states the reason for the change. And so then you would need to go and file the appeal after that point in time, and you have that document. So, um, also, Disability Rights Arizona is a fantastic resource if you needed additional guidance and legal guidance on your individual case. You can reach out to them for a call and see what they can do to support you. Um, Shai, any thoughts on the appeals or things of that nature?
Just again to go through this and read it before your meeting, just to educate yourself on what does it mean, what is the process. It makes the conversation easier if that's the route you end up going, even in that meeting. Just because you're more aware, you have an understanding, or at least a surface level understanding of what's next, is just really helpful. To kind of know if that's the route we end up going, what does that look like? And this again provided a really good resource for me, and it was helpful when we ended up having the conversation, and that is the route we ended up going. And so uh, it just helps. It helps with the overall communication, expectations for us and for them, and again helps keep that emotion level lower if that's the route you end up having to go.
Yeah. And I have been told, and DDD has stated this, that after the 90-day meeting, there will be 10 more days of the current authorizations. And then on day 11 is when those changes would go into effect. Um, so I've I've had a few outlier situations where the support coordinator tried to change it the day of or something of that nature. So just keep that in mind, that that is what is being done right now. Is there's 10 days of kind of a buffer, and then the new assessed hours will go into place on day 11. So that is something to keep in mind as well. And you can talk to your provider agency about how that will work. Um, the last two action items in here about sharing your story and raising awareness and some guidance on how to do that. I've seen countless amazing reels, stories, posts, all kinds of things, news articles. I've been so impressed by people in our community who are like, I'm going to contact the news and they're going to come to my house and do a story. And I'm just so appreciative for the wide variety of stories that are being told right now and those perspectives, because I think that gives the greater public a better understanding of what's happening, so that they can better help, influence and guide that on a public pressure standpoint. And then also we have a link to where you can share your story with Raising Voices Coalition, as we are amplifying those voices in our community moving forward. So I will be posting this, and this can be shared. This is a public class and resource. And again, this is very similar to the classes that we offer in our Raising Voices Coalition membership on a wide variety of topics related to advocacy. This one is just extremely important with what we are currently going through and what so many families are facing within the DDD and Arizona long-term care community. So thank you so much for your time, and I hope this was helpful. Shai, do you want to add any last words before we close out?
Just again, thank you for putting this together. As a mom and a parent, it was very helpful for me. Help to for the meeting, even after the meeting. And if there's anybody watching this video and you haven't gone through it or started clicking or reading, I just highly encourage you to do so. So such a source, a resource of information, and there's a lot out there. And so, yeah, just thank you. It was really helpful for us.
Awesome. We'll go at it. I'm glad. Awesome. Well, we will close this out. Thank you so much.